What if the war movies America clapped for are the ones soldiers quietly laugh at? And what if the films that died in empty theaters are the ones veterans pass around like a secret? Hollywood sells war. Sometimes Hollywood sells lies. 20 times, a war movie flopped so badly the studio buried it. And 20 times, the people who were actually there said, that one got it right. Number 20. Wind Talkers, 2002. Start with the biggest crater on this list, because it is also the most complicated. Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer spent $115 million on Wind Talkers. John Woo directed. Nicolas Cage starred. The film pulled in about $77 million worldwide. The studio reported a quarterly net loss of $121.8 million, and Wind Talkers was named the main drain. Critics tore it apart. Woo later said the studio wanted a John Wayne movie, and he wanted a movie about friendship. So why is it here at all? Because of the men sitting in the room at the premiere, watching their own lives on a cinema screen for the very first time. The Navajo code talkers built an unbreakable code out of their own language. The Japanese never cracked it. Their service stayed classified until 1968. More than 400 of them served, and in 2002, for the first time, their story reached a mass audience. Their reaction was split, and honesty demands we say so. Peter McDonald, a code talker, complained that most of the film was Nicolas Cage and his problems. Another code talker, Joe F. Price, who fought with the 2nd Marine Division, estimated that roughly 3/4 of what he saw matched what actually happened on Saipan. Samuel Billison, president of the Navajo Code Talkers Association, said something simpler. He said people would finally know who the code talkers were. That is why it opens this list. Not because the movie is great, because for 400 Marines who kept America's secrets for a lifetime, who came home and could not tell their own wives what they had done, a flawed film beat total silence. Sometimes the flop is not the story. Sometimes the flop is just the door. Number 19. Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk, 2016. Ang Lee shot this film at 120 frames per second, in 3 dimensions, at 4K resolution. Nobody had ever done it. Almost nobody could even project it. 2 theaters in the entire country could show it properly. The budget was $40 million. Domestic ticket sales came to $1.7 million. Read that again. Not 17 million. 1.7. Worldwide, it scraped together about $31 million. It is one of the strangest financial disasters in modern film. The story is small. A 19-year-old soldier named Billy Lynn is filmed dragging his wounded sergeant through a firefight in Iraq. The footage goes viral. His squad gets shipped home and paraded through a Dallas Cowboys halftime show like a marching band. Everyone thanks them. Nobody hears them. Veterans still argue about this one, and the argument is the point. Some veteran writers hated it. They called it a victim story, written by a civilian who never served. They said real soldiers are not passive. They chose to go. But other veterans watched the combat and went quiet. Iraq War veteran Jay Dorlius broke down the firefight scene for Insider and called it probably the most accurate scene he had seen. He walked through the ammunition, the fire discipline, the panic underneath the training. Here is the thing nobody disputes. The halftime show is the truest part. That gap between the person shaking your hand and the person who was there. Veterans recognize that gap instantly. Civilians barely notice it exists. He walked through the ammunition count, the fire discipline, the panic sitting underneath all that training. He gave it near-perfect marks. The movie failed. The feeling it captured did not. Number 18. Casualties of War, 1989. Brian De Palma spent 2 decades trying to make this film. He read the story in 1969, in a New Yorker article by Daniel Lang. 20 years later, Columbia Pictures finally let him shoot it. The budget was $22.5 million. The film earned $18.7 million. It opened in the summer of Batman and Indiana Jones, and audiences ran the other way. They ran because of what the movie shows. In November 1966, a 5-man American patrol kidnapped a young Vietnamese woman from her village. They raped her. They murdered her. One soldier refused to take part, and then spent months fighting his own chain of command to report it. That happened. The names were changed. The crime was not invented. Michael J. Fox plays the soldier who says no. Sean Penn plays the sergeant who decides a human being can be requisitioned like ammunition. Ennio Morricone wrote a score that sounds like a funeral mass. Now here is the honest part. A military historian reviewed the film's tactical detail and gave it low marks. The bridge guard scene is wrong. Some of the jungle work is wrong. Veterans do not defend this film for its fieldcraft. They defend it Because it refuses to lie about the thing every soldier knows and almost no film says out loud. Wars do not only kill people, they hand young men power over strangers and then leave them alone with it. Dale Dye, a Marine who served in Vietnam, appears in the film himself. Quentin Tarantino has called it the greatest film about the Vietnam War ever made. He was not talking about the bridge. He was talking about the staircase, and the men climbing it, and the one who would not. Number 17. They Were Expendable, 1945. Look at the credits. Directed by John Ford, Captain, United States Naval Reserve. Screenplay by Frank Weed, Commander, United States Navy, retired. Starring Robert Montgomery, Commander, United States Naval Reserve. Those are not costumes. Ford filmed the Battle of Midway and got hit doing it. He filmed the Normandy landings. Robert Montgomery actually commanded a patrol torpedo boat, then commanded a destroyer at Normandy. Frank Weed was a naval aviator. The film follows Motor Torpedo Boat Squadron 3 in the Philippines after Pearl Harbor. Small wooden boats, no armor, sent out against a fleet. The title tells you the Navy's opinion of them. It came out on the 7th of December, 1945. The war was over. America wanted to dance. Nobody wanted a 2-hour film about losing. It earned about $3 million at home and just over $1 million overseas, and after its high cost, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer recorded a loss on the books. Halfway through the shoot, Ford fell from scaffolding and broke his leg. He handed the picture to Montgomery, the man who had really done the job, and Montgomery directed until Ford came back. Ford also demanded an enormous fee for the film. He did not keep it. He used it to build a home for the veterans of his own field photographic unit. Watch it, and you will notice what is missing. No speeches, no swelling victory. Men do their duty, lose their boats, lose their friends, and walk into the jungle to keep fighting a battle already lost. Veterans recognize that. Losing is a thing that happens. Somebody still has to hold the line while it does, and nobody makes a poster out of them. James A.G., reviewing it at the time, said Montgomery gave the one perfect performance of the year. He had earned it the hard way. Number 16. The Beast, 1988. A Soviet tank crew takes a wrong turn in Afghanistan in 1981. They roll into a box canyon. The mouth of the canyon closes behind them. Mujahideen fighters begin hunting the machine, and the men inside begin hunting each other. That is the whole film. One tank, one valley, no heroes. The Beast, also released as The Beast of War, was directed by Kevin Reynolds and adapted from a stage play. It came out while the Soviet war in Afghanistan was still being fought. Box office receipts were so small that most reference works do not bother listing them. The film simply vanished. Then something odd happened. It refused to die. Copies turned up in bargain bins. People bought them, watched them, and bought more copies to give away. It has held cult status ever since, entirely on word of mouth, and the word of mouth started with people who knew tanks. The reason is on the screen. Reynolds shot in Israel, and the Israeli Defense Forces loaned him real armor. The tanks are T-67 vehicles, Israeli-modified T-55s, with authentic Soviet weapons alongside them. In 1987, seeing genuine Soviet armor in a Western film was almost unheard of. More than that, the film understands the machine. It knows a tank's main gun cannot elevate far enough to hit a man on a slope above it. It knows a tank is a coffin with an engine. It knows that being inside one is not protection. It is a target with your friends sealed in it. The commander tells his crew that Stalingrad made them heroes. Then a driver asks how they became the Nazis this time. Nobody in a cinema wanted to hear that in 1988. Number 15. The Big Red One, 1980. Samuel Fuller could have been a war correspondent. He was already a successful newspaperman and a published novelist. He enlisted as a rifleman instead. He served with the 16th Infantry Regiment, 1st Infantry Division. The unit patch was a red numeral 1. He fought through North Africa, Sicily, Omaha Beach, and the frozen fields of Belgium. He was there when his unit liberated the Falkenau camp. He earned the Silver Star, the Bronze Star, and the Purple Heart. He kept a diary the whole way. He spent more than 20 years trying to film that diary. Warner Brothers offered him money if he would cast John Wayne. He refused and waited. He finally shot it in 1979 for about $4 million, casting his friend Lee Marvin, a Marine who fought in the Pacific. His first cut ran nearly 4 hours. The studio hacked 47 minutes out of it and bolted on a narration Fuller never wanted. The film opened in 1980 to respectful reviews and did no real business. At Cannes, where the French critics loved it more than anything else in the festival, the jury gave it nothing at all. The version audiences saw in 1980 was not the film Fuller made, and still, Watch what survives. A baby delivered inside the belly of a tank. Veterans who stop learning the names of replacements because replacements die. A soldier who cannot pull the trigger on a man close enough to kiss, then empties a rifle into a camp guard hiding in an oven. Fuller put a line on the screen at the start. He called it a fictional life based on a factual death. He carried the war for the rest of his life. Number 14. Gardens of Stone, 1987. Francis Ford Coppola made Apocalypse Now. Then he made a film about the men who bury the dead, and almost nobody came. Gardens of Stone cost $13.5 million. It earned $5.3 million. It opened on 612 screens and never found an audience. Coppola's own son had died in a boat accident before filming began, and grief sits in every frame. The Gardens of Stone are the headstones at Arlington National Cemetery. The men tending them are the 3rd Infantry Regiment, the Old Guard. They carry the caskets. They fold the flags. They fire the volleys. Their rifles hold blanks. 15 bodies come home every day. James Caan plays a sergeant who fought in Korea and Vietnam and now wears a ceremonial uniform. He calls himself a toy soldier. He believes in the army. He does not believe in this war. Then the son of a dead friend arrives in his platoon, and he decides that if he can save one boy, that will have to be enough. The novel it came from was written by Nicholas Prophet, who actually served in the Old Guard at Fort Myer. He was not imagining the ritual. He had performed it. The Army opened its gates wider for this film than for any picture since the Green Berets. Officers trained the actors in the drill. The Army band played. In exchange, the Army read the script. Nobody wanted to watch it. It has no battles. It has no victory. It has 100 small, precise motions performed over a coffin, again and again, until you understand that those motions are the only dignity anyone can still give a boy who is already gone. Number 13. Tigerland, 2000. Colin Farrell was an unknown Irish actor. Joel Schumacher had just directed 2 Batman films that people still make fun of. Together they made a Vietnam movie that never goes to Vietnam. The budget was $10 million. Worldwide, Tigerland earned $148,701. That is not a typo. Not 148 million. 148,000. 20th Century Fox effectively dropped it into the ocean. Tigerland was a real place. It sat at Fort Polk, Louisiana, and it was the last stop before Vietnam. The Army built a swampy mock village there and ran men through it until the humidity and the fear started to feel familiar. Tens of thousands of young Americans passed through. Ross Clavin, who wrote the screenplay, went through it himself. He did his advanced infantry training at Tigerland. The reckless soldier at the center of the film, Boz, is based on a man Clavin actually trained beside. Schumacher shot the whole thing in 28 days on 16mm film. Handheld, grainy, ugly. The cast went through 2 weeks of infantry training first. There were no trailers, no makeup artists, no chairs. Nobody was comfortable. On purpose. What emerges is not a story about combat. It is a story about the last weeks before combat. About draftees in 1971 who all knew the war was lost, who had no illusions left, and who went anyway because there was no other door. A young soldier asks a sergeant for advice on staying alive in Vietnam. The sergeant tells him not to go. Nobody in America bought a ticket. Nobody remembered it existed. The men who actually lived it recognized the swamp immediately. Number 12. Guy Ritchie's The Covenant, 2023. This is the newest film on the list, and its failure is the least excusable. Guy Ritchie made his name on fast, funny British crime films. Then he made a quiet, grim, deadly serious movie about Afghanistan, and audiences did not show up. The budget was $55 million. Worldwide, it took about $21.6 million. It also became the best-reviewed film of Ritchie's entire career, with an audience score near perfect. The story is simple. An American Green Beret sergeant, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, is badly wounded deep in Taliban country. His Afghan interpreter, played by Dar Salim, drags and carries him across miles of mountain terrain to save his life. Then the American goes home, discovers his interpreter has been abandoned, and goes back. The film is invented. The situation is not. Thousands of Afghan interpreters worked alongside Western forces for 20 years. When the withdrawal came in 2021, the visas did not. People who had risked their families to help were left standing in an airport. Military publications took this film seriously. Military Times treated it as a dramatization of the promise soldiers make each other, that nobody gets left behind. The end credits do not roll over stunts. They roll over photographs of real soldiers standing beside their real interpreters. 3 years later, the film found its audience on streaming and became one of the quiet hits of 2026. Word of mouth did what a marketing budget could not. Veterans handed it to each other. One recommendation at a time, the way they always have. Some films flop because they are bad. This one flopped because it asked an uncomfortable question, in a spring when nobody wanted to hear it. Number 11. The Great Raid, 2005. On the 30th of January 1945, 121 American Rangers, a handful of Alamo Scouts, and roughly 200 Filipino guerrillas walked 30 miles behind Japanese lines and freed more than 500 prisoners of war from a camp at Cabanatuan. Those prisoners were survivors of the Bataan Death March. They had been starved, beaten, and worked for 3 years. 2 Americans died in the raid. Almost every prisoner walked out. It is arguably the most successful rescue mission in American military history. Hollywood took 60 years to film it, and then buried the result. The Great Raid was shot in 2002. Miramax sat on it. The Weinstein brothers were leaving the company. The release calendar collapsed, and finished films rotted on a shelf. It finally opened in August 2005 against a Deuce Bigalow sequel. It grossed $10.7 million worldwide against a production budget of at least $49 million and a marketing spend of $20 million on top. Captain Robert Prince planned the actual raid. He consulted on the film. He said it showed the raid accurately. Director John Dahl handed 6 hours of Prince's interviews to James Franco, the young actor playing him. Dale Dye, a retired Marine captain, put the cast through a boot camp in northern Queensland. Roger Ebert loved it. He wrote that here is a war movie that understands how wars are actually fought. What he meant is that the film is patient. The raid is planned, explained, rehearsed, and then executed step by step. There are no quick cuts, no graphics, just men doing a difficult job carefully, because careless men get their friends killed. That patience is exactly why nobody bought a ticket. Number 10. Cross of Iron, 1977. Sam Peckinpah made one war film. He drank his way through it, ran out of money before he could shoot the ending, and produced something Orson Welles could not stop thinking about. Cross of Iron is set on the Eastern Front in 1943. The German army is collapsing. The camera never leaves it. There are no Allied heroes. There is a battered sergeant named Steiner who only wants his men to live, and an aristocratic captain named Stransky who transferred to the front specifically to win a medal. In America, the film died. It opened in the year of Star Wars, and a bleak German-language nightmare about the losing side stood no chance. Gene Siskel gave it half a star out of 4. In Germany, it became the biggest hit since The Sound of Music. Across Europe and in Japan, audiences understood it immediately. Here is the part that matters. The novel underneath it was written by Willy Heinrich, a German infantryman who was wounded 5 times on the Eastern Front. The story is loosely built on a real, highly decorated Wehrmacht sergeant. The tanks are real T-34s borrowed from the Yugoslav army. The machine guns are real. Orson Welles saw it and cabled Peckinpah directly. He called it the finest anti-war film about the ordinary enlisted man since All Quiet on the Western Front. Ask a soldier what he fears most, and he will rarely say the enemy. He will say an officer chasing a decoration. That is the entire film. Steiner and Stransky are not fighting the Russians. They are fighting each other, and the Russians are simply the weather. Peckinpah ran out of money on the 89th day of shooting. The ending you see was improvised in an afternoon. Number 9. Thank You for Your Service, 2017. The title is a trap. It is the sentence strangers say to veterans in airports. The film is about what happens after the stranger walks away. Universal spent $20 million. The film earned $9.5 million and was pulled from theaters after 4 weeks. It opened against a Saw sequel. It never had a chance. Adam Schumann was a real staff sergeant with the 2nd Battalion, 16th Infantry Regiment. Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist David Finkel, embedded with his unit in Iraq, then followed the men home to Kansas. He found Schumann carrying a memory he could not put down. He had carried a wounded soldier down a staircase on his back, and the man's blood had run into his mouth while he gasped for air. Months later, he still tasted it. That is the film. 3 men come home. 1 kills himself. 1 loses his memory to a bomb blast and drifts toward drug dealers. 1 waits in a Veterans Affairs office with hundreds of thousands of other men, holding a number. The real Adam Schumann worked on the production as a technical advisor. He appears in the film. He sang backing vocals on the song Bruce Springsteen wrote for the closing credits. Universal and AMC gave away more than 10,000 free tickets to veterans and service members. Almost nobody used them. There is no triumph here. The victory at the end of the story is finding an open bed at a treatment center. That is it. That is the parade. Veterans keep recommending it to each other anyway, quietly, because it is the only major studio film that shows the paperwork, the waiting room, and the wife who has finally run out of patience. Number 8. The Last Full Measure, 2019. On the 11th of April, 1966, an Air Force pararescueman named William Pitsenbarger was riding a helicopter over a firefight in Vietnam. Below him, a company of the 1st Infantry Division was being cut to pieces. Their medic was down. Pitsenbarger, who was 21 years old, went down on a cable to help. The helicopter came back for him. He waved it off and stayed. He treated the wounded, loaded them, gathered ammunition, and picked up a rifle when the position was overrun. He was killed. He had flown more than 250 missions. He received the Air Force Cross. The men he saved spent more than 30 years arguing that it should have been the Medal of Honor. In December 2000, his parents finally received it. The film about that fight cost $20 million. It was dumped into theaters in late January, the graveyard of the release calendar, and earned $3 million. It was the final film of Peter Fonda's life. It was the last on-screen performance Christopher Plummer completed. The Vietnam Veterans of America reviewed it and did not hand out compliments freely. They said the invented Washington subplot was soft. They also said the battle scenes were so hyper-real that any combat veteran might find them hard to sit through. Stay through the credits. Real veterans of that battle appear and speak. Old men, on camera, still shaking, saying his name out loud. Among the 3,500 or so Americans ever awarded the Medal of Honor, only 3 have been enlisted airmen. The whole film is about a bureaucratic delay, a folder in the wrong drawer for 3 decades, and underneath it, a truth every veteran knows. The medal was never the point. Being remembered was. Number 7. A Midnight Clear, 1992, December 1944. The Ardennes Forest. 6 young Americans, chosen for the squad because they scored absurdly high on intelligence tests, are sent to occupy an empty chateau near the German lines. Losses have already cut them from 12 men to 6. They are frightened and freezing. Then they find German soldiers in the trees. Teenagers, led by an older sergeant, and the Germans do not want to fight. They want to surrender. They ask the Americans to stage a fake battle so their families back home will not be punished. The 2 groups meet in a forest cabin and fire their rifles into the air. Then, everything goes wrong. The budget was $5 million, though some reports put the real figure closer to 10. The film earned $1.5 million. It opened on a handful of screens and disappeared inside a month. The novel came from William Wharton, and Wharton was not guessing. He fought there. The director wanted to put the words "true story" on the screen, and the lawyers stopped him. Almost everything you see happened to the man who wrote it. The cast is a time capsule. Ethan Hawke, Gary Sinise, in his first theatrical film, Peter Berg, Kevin Dillon, Frank Whaley. Boys, playing boys. There is an image early on that nobody who sees it ever forgets. A dead German soldier and a dead American soldier, frozen solid, propped upright in the snow, locked in an embrace. Somebody arranged them that way on purpose. A joke, or a warning, or maybe a prayer. That is the film. 2 groups of exhausted children, trying to invent a way not to kill each other, in a war that will not permit it. Number 6. The Red Badge of Courage, 1951. Audie Murphy was the most decorated American soldier of the Second World War. He came home a national hero, put on the cover of Life magazine, and went to Hollywood, where they cast him in cheap westerns. Then John Huston asked him to play a coward. Stephen Crane wrote The Red Badge of Courage in 1895, about a young Union soldier who runs from his first battle and spends the rest of the book trying to earn back his own respect. Huston shot it on land he owned in California. He filled the ranks with rough-looking men he found in pool halls. He cast Bill Mauldin, the famous Stars and Stripes cartoonist who had served in Italy alongside Murphy's own unit. James Whitmore, another veteran, narrates. Huston considered his 2-hour cut the best work of his life. Hedda Hopper saw it at a private screening and called it the greatest war picture ever made. Then Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer previewed it for a student audience, and the students laughed and left. Louis B. Mayer, who had never wanted the film, was delighted. The studio cut it from 120 minutes to 69. It was too short to headline, so it went out as a supporting feature on a double bill. The deleted footage was destroyed. It cost about $1.6 million and earned about $1.1 million. Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer wrote off roughly $1 million. Watch Murphy's face in the version we still have. The most decorated soldier alive, playing a boy who runs. He did not need research. He did not need a coach. He had already lived inside that fear, and he never fully climbed out of it. He knew exactly how it felt. Number 5. The Messenger, 2009. There is no combat in this film. Not one battle. And veterans keep putting it near the top of every list they make. 2 soldiers drive to houses, They wear dress uniforms. They knock on doors. They say a sentence they have memorized, and then they leave. They are casualty notification officers. The rules are strict, and the film follows them exactly. Do not touch the next of kin. Do not offer details. Do not stay. Get the words out and go. The budget was $6.5 million. It opened in 4 theaters and took $44,000. Over its whole life, worldwide, it earned about $1.5 million. It received 2 Academy Award nominations and won a Silver Bear in Berlin, and almost nobody watched it. The filmmakers worked directly with the Army and with Walter Reed. Their technical advisor was Lieutenant Colonel Paul Senor, who had actually served as a casualty notification officer. Director Oren Moverman had served in the Israeli military. He said coming home from combat is like arriving from another planet. Ben Foster plays a wounded sergeant with 3 months left on his contract. Woody Harrelson plays the captain training him, a man who never saw combat and hates himself for it. 6 notifications. 6 doorways. A mother collapses. A father throws things. A man is told in a language he barely speaks that his daughter is dead. One woman simply says thank you and closes the door, and the silence afterward is unbearable. That is why veterans point at it. Everyone films the war. Almost nobody films the knock. Everyone films the medal. Almost nobody films the sedan pulling up outside a house at 7 in the morning, and the 2 men inside it who have not slept. Number 4. The Outpost, 2019. Combat Outpost Keating sat at the bottom of a valley in Afghanistan, surrounded on 3 sides by mountains held by the enemy. One analyst said it might as well have been called Camp Custer. On the 3rd of October 2009, 53 American soldiers and 2 Latvian advisors were attacked by roughly 300 to 400 Taliban fighters. The battle lasted 12 hours. 8 Americans were killed. 27 were wounded. The unit became one of the most decorated of the entire war. And 2 men, Clinton Romesha and Ty Carter, received the Medal of Honor. The film about it never really got a theatrical release. Its premiere at South by Southwest was canceled when the pandemic shut the festival down. It went to video on demand in July 2020. The box office simply never happened. And then the veterans found it. Rod Lurie, the director, graduated from West Point and served 4 years in the Army. Ty Carter, the Medal of Honor recipient, worked as an advisor and appears in the film. Daniel Rodriguez, who fought in the battle, plays himself. Henry Hughes, another survivor, acts in it. A retired Marine colonel who served in Afghanistan reviewed the film for Insider and gave it 9 out of 10 for realism. A Navy SEAL called it the best war movie since Black Hawk Down. Lurie wrote afterward that the box office meant nothing to him. The only verdict he cared about came from the men who had been at Keating. Lone survivor sold you 1 hero. The Outpost shows you 53 people trying to keep each other alive. Badly, brilliantly, and mostly by accident. Heroism here is not a man. It is a group, improvising under fire. Number 3. 84C Mopic, 1989. In the Vietnam era, the Army job code 84 Charlie meant motion picture specialist, a combat cameraman. Men called them mopic. This film pretends to be that cameraman's footage. A 6-man long-range reconnaissance patrol goes deep into enemy territory in the Central Highlands. The camera goes with them. We never see the man holding it. We see everything he sees. It was released in 1989, into the crowded aftermath of Platoon and Full Metal Jacket. It was made for almost nothing. It reached almost no theaters. It was honored at the Independent Spirit Awards, and then it fell off the edge of the world. Patrick Sheen Duncan wrote and directed it. He served in Vietnam. 2 Marines, Dale Dye and Russ Thurman, worked on it. They knew the hand signals, the noise discipline, the exact way a man checks his gear before he steps off. Roger Ebert wrote that he had never seen a combat film that felt this close to actual experience. Mike Durand, an Army combat veteran of the Iraq War, wrote about watching it years later. He said there are no subplots. Only the fight to stay alive, hour by hour, on an ordinary patrol where death can appear at any moment. He said the first time he watched it, he was not certain it was fiction. It has no arc, no lesson, no swelling music. Men whisper, men wait, men sweat. Somebody snaps a twig, and everybody stops breathing. 10 years before the Blair Witch Project, before found footage was even a genre, a Vietnam veteran built the most honest patrol ever put on film with almost no money at all. Almost nobody saw it. Ask a Marine, though. Ask a Marine who was actually out there in the bush. Number 2. Kilo 2 Bravo, 2014. In Britain, they called it Kajaki. In America, they retitled it Kilo 2 Bravo and released it into a void. On the 5th of September, 2006, a 3-man sniper team from 3rd Battalion, the Parachute Regiment, left an observation post above the Kajaki Dam in Helmand Province. They walked down into a dry riverbed. Lance Corporal Stuart Hale stepped on a mine left behind by the Soviets 25 years earlier. His leg was gone. His friends ran to him, and then they understood what they were standing in. That is the film. There is no enemy. Nobody shoots at them. The Taliban never appear. There is only a patch of dirt, an unmarked minefield, and a group of young men who cannot move, cannot leave their friend, and cannot stop trying. A rescue helicopter arrives and cannot land, because it has no winch. Its rotor wash sets off more mines. Corporal Mark Wright organized the rescue effort. He was killed. He was awarded the George Cross. The director, Paul Kadis, tracked down every surviving participant and interviewed them. He built a private group so families of the dead could see what he was making. Stuart Hale, the man who stepped on the first mine, vouched publicly for the film's accuracy. It holds a perfect 100% critical score. In Britain, it caused a small political storm. A member of Parliament who had served in the parachute regiment himself raised it in the House of Commons. In America, it barely registered. Nobody wanted a war film with no villain, no battle, and no rescue. Only young men, sitting in the dirt, holding tourniquets, refusing to leave. A British soldier who served in Afghanistan put it plainly. The film gets the attitude 100% right. Number 1. Go Tell the Spartans, 1978. 1978 belonged to The Deer Hunter and Coming Home. Between them, they took 8 Academy Awards. Everybody watched them. Everybody argued about them. The same year, a small film opened with almost no publicity and vanished. Its production had run out of money before filming ended. Burt Lancaster, the star, quietly reached into his own pocket and paid for the rest of it. Go Tell the Spartans is set in 1964. There is no American war yet. There are advisors, 16,000 of them, propping up the South Vietnamese army. Major Asa Barker, played by Lancaster, is ordered to occupy a worthless hamlet called Muc Wa. He knows the order is stupid. He falsifies a report to avoid it. His bluff is called. He sends his men. His men are a draftee, an exhausted sergeant, a naive lieutenant, and a South Vietnamese interrogator who enjoys his work. At Muc Wa, they find a French military cemetery, 302 graves. The French died there 10 years earlier, doing exactly what the Americans are about to do. Over the gate is the epitaph of the 300 Spartans at Thermopylae. Critic Stanley Kaufman called it the best film yet made about the Vietnam War. It was 14 years too early, and nobody was ready. Decades later, Military.com asked service members and veterans to name the war films that mattered. Go Tell the Spartans is on the list. One reader described it as the only accurate movie about the experience of the advisors. Burt Lancaster paid for that ending with his own money. Nobody came. Nobody wrote about it. Nobody gave it an award. And the men who were actually there, in 1964, before the world was watching, have never once forgotten it. So here is the uncomfortable truth. The war films that made money mostly sold you a hero. The war films that lost money mostly sold you a man in a hole, doing a job, waiting. Veterans keep choosing the second kind. Now tell me I am wrong. Which flop belongs on this list that I left off? And which blockbuster does not deserve its reputation? Say the title, defend it. I will read every single one.